We're rolling.
Hi, I'm Cameron.
Hi, I'm Likhona, formerly known as Likhona because I like to.
Hi, I'm Cameron.
Hi, I'm
And
Likhona.
this is episode 2 of season 2 of Queer Talks.
Get into it, yeah.
Don't look at me like that. Don't act straight when you're gay.
Let's go.
You've seen us through season 1, you know, me and the baddest. You know, we had episode 1, we had the baddest. We spoke fashion, we spoke navigating spaces, we spoke growing up as fashionistas and queer.
And now we're back with episode 2.
Exactly. We'd like to hop into some different topics, but before I go too far, let me let everyone introduce themselves, you know, give you a feel of who they are.
My name is Likhona, but you can call me Likhona. My pronouns are they, them.
Hi, my name is Cameron. My pronouns are they, she.
I'm not going to the cuteness. The baddest in the school and the baddest in the game. THANKSTO. Buhle, what are we talking about today?
Okay, so we're talking about identity. We're talking about identity politics. We're talking about navigating your identity before even navigating your identity in other spaces.
Or with other people.
Exactly. Because we need to be honest about the fact that knowing yourself is an internal battle before it is your relation to other people, you know. I want to pose a question to you now. When did you know you were quote unquote different? This doesn't mean gay. This just means when did you know that you didn't necessarily gel with the society around you?
Can I start?
You start.
More than anything, I've always known. Like, before I was treated differently, before it was projected on me, I've always known that I was different. I've always felt different. And I would see other boys act a certain way, and I'm like, I don't know nothing about that lifestyle. For real though.
That's not me. That could not be you there.
I got nothing to do with that lifestyle. But more than anything, I grew up in a very feminine household. My dad was never there. I never had brothers. So I was very inclined with my femininity from a very young age. And I felt the most comfortable. And growing up, I was given the freedom to explore and experiment with my femininity because there was no masculine figure to try and stop or restrict me from that. So with that platform, as much as it was not a lot, it gave me enough to know enough about myself. I've always noticed the matter of accepting who am I.
Thank you.
I grew up in a very conservative Afrikaans household. So basically from the jump, I was like, I'm not doing what my cousins are doing. I don't feel the way my cousins feel. In the conversations that we would have, it would always just kind of be like, I'm listening to you, but I'm not hearing you. I don't resonate with what you're saying. And because of the environment I grew up in, I always felt very alone. And I didn't find the vocabulary for that until I got to high school, where I didn't even know queerness was a thing. I didn't know it existed. I had no idea. And this girl came in and she identified as bi. And I was like, oh wait, people don't all feel this way? Like, I'm not supposed to feel this way about girls. That's kind of, And then that really gave me like the moment to explore with my identity and with how I express. And it was still like a very claustrophobic environment. But it was also a thing of like, now I can really start to engage with who I think that I am.
And how are you finding that navigation? Are you breathing lighter? Is the space at home safer? How is that going?
It is. I came out very young. I came out at 16.
Which is young.
Which is young. And since then, it's given me a moment to like, well, at least in my familial space, to be like, hey, this is a safe person to be myself around. This isn't a safe person to be myself around, and to police my identity therein. So in a way, I do feel I breathe lighter, but in another way, like, dealing with your identity is a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
I'm discovering so much about myself every day and engaging with that and like trying to just be is difficult.
Push it over to you, Kahuna. I think you're always doing the what about you, but what about you?
What about me?
What about you? I mean, in the previous episode, I think you gave us
What isn't about you?
a look into what it meant to be a young Kago.
But you're trying to make me go deeper. You
Go
said I want
deeper.
to trauma.
Go deeper, Papa. Go deeper.
So how low can you go?
I just want to know if there was a particular moment where you were like, maybe, perhaps, I I'm just not like the girls.
Wow. When did I know I was different? From a young age, I knew I was different, but then I also attracted people who were like me, right? And remember in the previous episode I said, just because somebody is different doesn't mean they're queer, right? And so from a young age I was like, oh my god, I've got a high-pitched voice. Oh my god, people say I look like a girl. But my nearest friend also looks like a girl. And my nearest friend also has a high-pitched voice. So because I knew we were different, I still couldn't maybe separate that from the world because my world were those people.
I very much relate to that in the sense that expressing myself, I've always was labeled and I was bothered, especially at home. They always made excuses for my visibility more than anything. And they'll be like, no, there's your cousin that dresses like this or speaks like this, and they all were efforts, to be honest. They all queer, but they will try and find a justification to stay. Yes, and they were like, no, you can't be straight and you can't be feminine, you can't be a boy, and you know, and as Kago was saying, I also attracted a lot of people that looked like me or that were like me, especially when I was younger, until I grew and I grew those people and we were no longer the same, and I stood by myself and I was very much visible and they were not visible, and that's when I realized that no, I'm visible whether I like it or not, whether I dress a certain way, whether I present myself a certain way, I will be visible. So I don't know, I think that's where my navigation was hard for me, because growing up, I had people that were like me, you know, to the point where I'm just like, no, maybe I am straight.
Me and Tristy laughed at that.
No, like, because the men are right.
Maybe I am straight because like I have people that look like me and like
who are saying they're straight.
You know, and like queerness doesn't have an image, you know, same as being straight. Like you can be straight, Kago mentioned you can be straight, you can be feminine, you can be high.
Exactly.
So said queen.
Interesting.
I'm a queen, dog.
So like I thought that I was not different, but I felt different. As much as I thought that I wasn't, I felt the indifference, if that makes sense.
Makes
It definitely
complete
makes
sense.
sense.
Let me jump in.
But before you jump in, let me throw you out.
Exactly.
When did you know you were different?
I was expecting it. You see, the thing is, with a girl like me, look at me.
Get into it.
No, but seriously, like you said, you always attracted people like you. I think I've always attracted the opposite, even in my current life right now. I always attract feminine friends, not even gender specific. I just attract feminine friends. And so I think I was kind of always in the know about my difference, but I wasn't aware of it then. I just looked back and I was like, oh,
Or
you're
even
kind of pretty.
have the words to identify.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing for me is the wording. Like I've only learned when I got to a certain age, actually just as I was ending my teen years, to find the wording to specifically identify with my personal identity, if that makes sense. I never had the wording, and for the longest time, it goes back to what you were saying, that your identity is a journey, like you're constantly knowing yourself and you're constantly evolving and you're constantly finding yourself within yourself. So I never had the wording, like growing up I never had the wording, I was never exposed to it, and so it was, I think more than anything, I think that was the hardest thing, like there was gay and I'm like, I'm not gay, I'm not gay.
That doesn't speak.
No, that's not me, that's not mine. So until I found the wording, I think I really struggled with my identity per se, because I was just like, who am I? Like, why am I feeling like this? Why do I feel different?
Which is so interesting. Buhle, do you want to speak?
I was just gonna say, I want to throw that in the balance, that how has that affected how you navigate your identity now?
But before that, that's very interesting. Or even alongside that, right? When we speak about identity politics, we speak about how we label ourselves as
Yeah.
Yes.
and labeling as a thing that happens in our community. How do you feel about that? Because you're saying, how do you navigate it? And I'm saying, why would I navigate something that I don't want at all? How do you feel about labels?
I feel like, to be quite honest, labels, in my opinion, is like a very heterosexist idea of like, because we label ourselves to try and explain. We label ourselves to try and present ourselves and like to make almost okay. Like I can't go to my parents and be like, actually I'm gender non-conforming, because they don't understand what that means. And even though I don't necessarily agree with what the label would encapsulate, how do I explain to them without that vocabulary?
Yeah, nuances in that.
Exactly. Like I also feel that labels are very much a thing of going back to what you were saying when you were a teenager and you didn't really understand how to navigate your identity. Being a teenager is hard.
Yeah,
like, already,
definitely.
first of all, being a teenager, you don't know, you're barely even a person at that point.
For real.
And if you find something that's even like moderately like, yes, I can relate to this, you want to almost stick yourself to it, even though you don't understand entirely or like you don't feel like it fits. And I think as we grow older, those labels suddenly almost become obsolete for us because it's also an exhausting practice where even though we find them obsolete, we have to continually explain ourselves and be like, oh no, I identify as this, this, and this, so that other people can perceive us and project onto us what they understand those labels. Yeah.
I think when anything for me, what I hate most about the labels is that I know what I identify as and I'm comfortable with that. It comes with having to come out. When I meet someone new or I come out to someone because they're gonna misgender me. Like I always think 5 times before I actually correct them when they misgender me because it comes with the responsibility of having to educate them about my identity, and I'm just like, as much as I'm uncomfortable with you misgendering me constantly, there's also the labor of me having to explain my identity to you. As much as I don't like labels, if they weren't labels, I don't identify with gender as a period. Gender is beyond me, you know? Period.
And how do you even like get into explaining identity politics with someone that you know won't understand?
And sometimes you don't even know how safe it is.
Is why we're here to have that conversation. The politics behind identity, right? Do we feel as though black? I don't know what I was gonna say.
I think moving back to educating, I feel that is one of the hardest parts of identity and identity politics, because identity is not a stagnant thing. It's ever changing. As a human being, regardless of whether you identify as a queer person, you're whatever, you're an ever growing being whose mind changes about my favorite color maybe changes, my favorite food changes. Who's to say that the way I feel about myself, the way I think about myself will change, you know?
Which is interesting, because the world understands that politics is malleable and politics is never changing. Right? Leaders change, beliefs change, systems change. But when it comes to identity, once you've given yourself a label, labels don't change.
And I also feel like in that sense, then labels are by proxy invalidating. Because suddenly now, because I identify as something else, you're going to look at me and be like, oh, so you weren't that thing in the first place. Which really invalidates your growth as a human being. Yeah, like as a human being.
I don't know what you're saying. The hardest part is that people don't accept that you are allowed to grow and you're allowed to change within your growth. And it sucks, I'm not going to lie.
It's definitely not easy.
And it kind of hurts because it's just like, I've done so much labor to know myself. Like, knowing yourself and finding yourself is a journey, and the journey is hard. Like,
and the journey can be lonely.
Yes.
That journey is a hard journey. And I read somewhere, it was a tweet or a conversation that someone was having. And they said, I used to identify as this, right? I identify with my body, and so I use he, him, them pronouns. When I grew into knowing who I was, then I started saying, but actually, maybe I am trans, right? But their partner was not willing to be with somebody who's not he, him.
I think that's
and now it brings us into this conversation about how do we date given the politics and the structure of how identity is given to us.
I just don't date. Let me explain it. Let me explain it for honest reasons. The last time I was in a relationship was around July last year. And who I was July last year is not who I am today. Who I presented myself as then is not who I present myself today as. You know, to the point where I would think, and I'm like, my past relationship encounters, I don't think that some of them would be with who I am today, because I've grown. I'm like that person that was on Twitter was saying, I presented myself, I thought I was cishet, like I thought I was a boy. So I presented myself as a boy. As much as I knew Anya was queer, I thought I was a boy. So I presented myself as a boy, and I attracted boys that liked boys, you know, masculine boys per se. And the thing is, I've noticed that I'm evolving, I'm changing, and the way I express myself, like, there will be days where I'm literally just a girl. Like, I will present myself as a girl. Like, even I'm wearing heels, I'm wearing a skirt, and like, you could easily mistake me for being a girl. But there will be times where I want to present myself as a boy, and it's a matter of how would I find a partner that will be able to deal with the many versions of myself that are constantly evolving without it being a problem. Because it's like, let's be real, people have preferences, and as much as preferences can be a horrible, a toxic thing, but we all have our own preferences. Like, naturally, like, I would like someone that's taller or whatever. Okay, I'm gonna use body as an example. Let me not use body as an example, but like, for example, I prefer someone that listens to a certain artist because that's what I like, you know. With that being said, we're growing, so I'm not gonna like that person all the time, or that musician all the time, or...
But it's different, right? And it's different in this conversation because of how we're conditioned, right? And so when you identify with the label gay, you also identify with men to men, right? And when you identify with the term man, you then identify with the masculinity and the heteronormativity. And so it's not the same. And we have to speak about the nuances in that, right? And how those affect dating. So I wanted to say, how about instead of saying some days I identify as a woman and some days I identify as a man, why is the conversation not, I'm just me, right? Because now we're playing into those labels. I'm a girl because I'm wearing heels, and I'm a girl because I'm wearing a skirt.
I would like to
rebuttal if you want to rebuttal.
Yeah,
I can fight.
In that conversation, morally, yes, you're correct.
Yes.
And in terms of what we should be thinking, yes, you're correct. But I think I have the same reservations as Lix because I'm aware that there are some preferences that I have as a person that I would like if I were ever to have a partner.
That got deep real quick. That got deep real quick.
I agree because you are right. Theoretically, you are right. But we live in the society that we live in. But we do. But really, we do. And like, I've been lucky enough to have a partner that is very conducive to my growth and identity. And I know that I'm a minority in that because, like, back to the tweet, it also isn't their partner's fault. Because their partner,
unfortunately,
had the idea that they were going to sign up for a relationship with, you know, a he/him presenting person, and that didn't turn out to be the case. And it's no one's fault. It's just hard. And in that case, you can't, because you can't stick with someone then, because it's going to make you feel differently. And then you would not be being true to yourself or your partner. And it would just be contentious, and it wouldn't be good. And it's no one's fault in that situation, it just is.
That's why I don't want to date at all, because putting myself in that position where I have to present myself in a way my partner prefers, essentially, it's kind of hard, because some days I'm going to want to present myself in a certain way, and some days I'm going to want to present myself in a certain way since I've been more visible. The dating scene has been so much harder for me as opposed to when I identify as a boy. As much as it's harder when you are a gay boy, if we can say, the dating pool is much more bigger than when you identify as a trans folk, because like it's more like it becomes
the dating pool is already a pond.
It's nothing. Like it's nothing. And it's a kitchen. It's literally nothing. It's nothing, and it's like you're not perceived as much as you are, but like you're perceived in a sexualized way, or you fetishized, and you know, and it's like it's conflicting for me. It's like I have an internal complexities in the sense that I know, like, if I present myself as a boy, I'm naturally going to attract more people. Now I'm like, in dating spaces, do I just present myself as a boy or a masculine folk? Even with dates, I think first dates are the hardest.
This is passion.
Like, dates are
your space, to let it out.
Dates are so much harder because it's like, I don't know what to wear. Like, I don't know how they're gonna receive who I am. I'm like, how do I present myself? Navigating the dating scene is an obstacle for me, especially now that I'm more inclined with my identity more than I've ever been in my entire life.
I don't mean no Vala, but I think you've opened up another topic.
Let's go.
How have you currently, I know you said you're not dating, maybe theoretically, maybe in general, how are we all, and I think this question is posed to everyone, navigating the dating scene, knowing that maybe there's parts of you that
you have to minimize,
feel are quote unquote undesirable.
But is it you feel or is it trauma? Have people made you feel that?
You feel like that because of trauma.
You wanna start?
No, I do not. I actually don't.
Let's give it to Motsoagae, maybe.
I can start. Yeah, true.
Re-ask me the question one more time.
Okay.
The people didn't hear.
So, how do you navigate the dating scene as someone, I don't know, with whatever that you feel is undesirable in you based on your traumas?
THANKSTO. This is actually very interesting, right? Because for 5 years of my life, as we said in episode 1, season 1, I identified as asexual, right? And I identified as asexual because I didn't feel like I had that romantic attraction with people when I was honestly myself, right? And in learning who I am and in that navigation, I've kind of learned into, okay, maybe there are people who like you, maybe there are people who don't like you. And so how I present myself now in trying to navigate dating is I have to be 100% authentic, right? No matter how uncomfortable it makes me. Because I know that if I present myself as the erased part of me, because it is a part of erasure, right? It will come to affect my relationship.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And so how I believe is I have to be 100% queer, even if it means, and I don't know what 100% means to other people, but to me, even if it means I stay single forever, that's what it means to me. And so before I let you speak, I once subbed somebody about this. Grindr. Go no.
First of all.
Right. And I once said this, as openly queer people, right? And openly queer is a twofold. I'm openly queer because I've presented as openly queer, and I'm openly queer because people see me as queer. Even before I speak, people see me as queer. We owe it to both ourselves and the people who look up to us, and maybe that's an unfair expectation, but we owe it to ourselves and people who look up to us to be 100% authentic. And so I said to him, when you go on Grindr and you present this person who you're not because you're trying to be desirable, you're teaching something that's wrong, both to yourself and to everybody else. We need to walk into spaces and say, I know what I want when I'm 100% myself.
And ultimately, like, it's really unfair to yourself as well, because eventually, like, you can't not be yourself with the person you want to spend time with. Like, eventually that's going to come out, and then it's going to be a shock and a surprise, and you're going to get hurt, but you were hiding from yourself, baby, the whole time, and from them.
So does that make you a liar? You see, now we go into those conversations.
But if you look at it in an honest perspective, in theory you can do that, but like, it sucks not being desired.
And it hurts.
It sucks and it hurts. It affects your self-esteem, it affects the way you look at yourself. And when you do have the accessibility to make yourself desirable, no matter what the politics may be, you're not gonna look at the politics, you're gonna look at, I'm lonely, like no one wants me, I know what people
and
want.
How do I appeal to this?
Let me present this to, like, unfortunately that's the reality of it. And as much as...
The other reality of it though is, at what cost?
Yeah.
Attention is attention.
True. So, I was on dating apps, particularly Tinder. I'm not gonna lie, I was looking for love.
I'm looking for him, John. Should we tell them about that? At the end, we'll speak about it.
And I was like, if I'm gonna look for love, I want someone who's gonna love me for who I am, at my utmost. I don't wanna shun certain parts of myself.
And when you presented that person,
I was not like that. I was not desired as I was when I present myself as the more desirable traits of myself per se. When I was perceived, I would have to be like, no, like I wear dresses, I wear wigs, and I hated that I had to explain myself like we're in the midst of this relationship or whatever. Now I have to explain that, no, listen dude,
some days I want to do makeup.
Yes, and some days it's like 80% of the time. Like, not presenting certain parts of yourself hurts, because it's like, you're hating yourself.
It's an act of self.
You're hating yourself because you know yourself, you took the years, you took the labor, you took the responsibility of teaching yourself, of unlearning and learning who you are, now that you know who you are, you have to basically shun yourself and restrict yourself from all that labor, which is kind of like wasteful.
What had a question? What was the question?
My question got blown out.
Lost in the mix.
It got blown out the park. I will go into navigating dating. First of all, it's not a secret that I don't navigate dating.
Is it trauma or is it choice? A bit of both.
Same.
Let me tell y'all something. They said to me at the beginning of the episode, deeper, papa, deeper. And like I'm going inside the chomika until you open.
No, I mean, that's cool. There's a wall that you build.
Yes.
You first build a wall when you're figuring yourself out. But unfortunately, there will always be, or fortunately, there will always be an outer appeal.
Okay.
That's true, you know. But it's so dangerous to actually just decide to let people in.
Yeah.
You know? Especially when you battle with identity so often. Because there's two sides to this coin. You know, there's the side where I think in navigating being masculine presenting, you know, you're faced with people who expect you to be overtly masculine presenting
All the time.
Exactly.
In every space.
Exactly. But in trying to, I don't know, rework the feminine side of yourself into the mix, you find, I don't know what's the word for it.
No, I
But
get
it's
you.
something toxic, you know, in people that want to jump into relationships and just make sure you know they're not about heteronormativity, and I respect that, but they so often push you into a side of you that you aren't or aren't yet. Like, yeah, you said you're kind of feminine, so it's fine. Don't worry, like you're my girl, like, and I respect that, cool, but there is a very toxic side of I don't want to be heteronormative. You know, I am masculine presenting, and there is masculine parts of me that will shine through. You know, not everything is let's just scrap heteronormativity. I'm not trying to be heteronormative. I'm just me.
That's you.
So I think in navigating dating, my first rule is just don't.
I'm sorry. I think your first rule was gonna be never let a clown nigga try to play you. If he play you, then rule number 2 is fuck his best friends, then they give me yes man.
I'm with you,
Yeah,
Joe.
that's-
First rule, don't date. Just
First
don't.
rule is don't.
But it's not
Don't.
real because Likhona said sometimes you want to be loved.
All the time. We all want to be loved. Whether it's our
Mine is
friends,
a lot less than a lot of people. I don't want to lie. Like, I don't even think I'm like capping. Like, I genuinely feel like as I grow older, because I used to be a hopeless romantic.
Used to be a hoe and a what?
A hopeless romantic.
Aren't you putting them on blast?
You know me. I was a relationship merchant. But I think I'm growing more into a person who has less and less interest in being in any type of romantic setting.
You know what? That's entirely valid because I feel like we put a lot of
It's boring.
pressure.
It is.
Very valid and boring.
Valid and boring, and those two things
boring
exist at the
Can
same
exist
time.
at the same time.
Yeah,
Because we put a lot of pressure in being, in like actually finding the one, which doesn't exist first of all. There's no way. There's no way. And like we put a lot of pressure in like the idea of being this one person for the rest of your life, and then the other half of you, maybe you're a whole person by yourself.
Do you find that in navigating your identity and navigating it through dating, that from a young age you sort out finding the one from a young age?
Yeah.
And therefore that affects how you date now?
Yes.
Not really.
I mean, it's about your experience.
Not really.
It starts.
My traumas are not there. They don't come from that. It comes from having to protect my identity. It comes from being people just. Am I allowed to swear?
You are allowed to swear. But before you continue, I want you to unpack for me how they're not linked. Because I'm saying, when you were younger, you were not who you are now.
Yes.
And so, inevitably, they have to be linked. Because how are you comparing to things that are
Also,
not the
like
same?
all of your traumas are in some way or another linked.
True. Okay.
Not
True.
all my psychologist.
I agree. Okay.
Buhle, you were ready to answer. Don't switch up on us now.
No, Kago, you can reflect.
Oh, you can reflect. take?
My take on the question you just asked.
Yes.
I think it's not trauma. I think when I was younger, did I wanna find the one? It wasn't like anything trauma-ridden. For me, it was genuinely
It wasn't trauma-ridden. I'm asking now.
Yeah, but there was a process.
Let's get into it.
You know, it was genuinely just coming from a family where my parents were married. For me, that was the
Ideal.
not even ideal. It was just like the automatic. It doesn't make sense for
Destination.
me.
You know the last round in the game?
But not
That's
even.
what it was.
It's not even like that's what I want to do. It's like it doesn't make sense for me to be involved with you if I'm not
Gonna date you
romantically
before.
involved with you till marriage.
To be fair, that's all you've ever known.
Exactly.
So that's why impact.
And I can't say I've moved out of that. I've just, it's maybe that or nothing. And nothing just seems better. Because
Why? Because isn't it a grayscale? And can't you
Because
date
you
people without
experience
having
more.
to marry them?
that's the thing, man. But that means there must be an end. Every end is painful. And you work so hard to heal yourself after every single end that at some point I'm like, you know what? This is cute, but I actually don't want to have to continue doing this work of healing.
That part.
So
That part. And the thing is, like, things can end on a healthy note.
it's so
But
painful.
still,
doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yes.
It's so painful.
You still have to do the labor of healing. And child, that shit.
As I was saying, every end is painful.
Yeah.
I think that's also why I don't want to navigate relationships. Besides identity, not to go off topic, like, you have to heal yourself. Like, after anything is like, in order for a relationship to work properly, you have to open yourself to a certain extent, and you have to allow people.
So you know what?
And like,
I actually think that isn't even off topic at all, because at the end of the day, when you're doing that healing, you're always going to ask a question of like, was it my fault? Was it because I wasn't enough? Was it because something about me was wrong?
oh my word.
So you have to engage in that healing.
Triggered.
To build yourself
Trigger
up.
warning.
I'm so sorry.
No stress.
And like they said, ends are painful. And this video might be reaching an end soon, but we're not there yet. We asked our people on Instagram and anonymously to ask us questions about anything queer related, and we're gonna put into our beautiful bandages, right? We're talking identity, we're talking identity politics and how they're affecting dating. Some people don't even date because their sexuality is structured differently. I saw a question like that, but I want to read it. This question says, can you explain in detail what an asexual, aromantic person is and how you fall on that spectrum? Let's get into it.
I don't identify with either of those labels. It's different for everyone. And it's a spectrum for everyone. And I don't think that there's a set answer or a right answer to like explain how that exists or is for everyone. But like I said, I don't really identify with either of those. So I feel like it would be very ignorant of me to just say this is how it's meant to be, because there is no way for that.
It's not our space to speak
Yeah.
about it.
Aside from how it's meant to be, though, what does it mean? Do you know what it is?
Aromantic and asexual. Okay, so then this would be a person that does not feel romantic or sexual attraction up towards other people. But that doesn't mean they don't feel different attraction. It's like you could have platonic attractions or like, just affectionate attractions. That happens too. It just doesn't fall into, I suppose, the traditional cis-heteronormative patriarchal, like colonial idea of what a romantic or like a partnership actually would be.
An attraction.
Exactly, yeah. Because it doesn't make it any less valid, it just makes it different.
At my end, I think those are both identities that I battle with at some point. Maybe
Same.
maybe still kind of battle.
Still struggle with it sometimes.
Yeah, and I think a younger me fell into asexuality because it was just a safety net, like I actually didn't want to be dating women. Of course that goes along with the space you're in and what that means to the space that raised you, and presenting how I present comfortably and being asexual was the best safety net for me. But I think now growing up and realizing that it's not always about not having patience or not wanting to not heal or, endless reasons. There is some sort of sort of tinges of asexuality, aromanticness, and it doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that I am able to form attraction or I am able to form feeling.
And I think that's important,
Yeah.
right? Because it takes me into this point, and probably one of the concluding points, is that when we identify ourselves, we're not single identity, right? You can be genderqueer and this, and this, and that. They can all exist together. And so, like Buhle said, I also share a similar experience, right? But I'm also able and conscious of the fact that I'm able to create those relationships. And so sometimes I'm like, am I a demisexual, asexual? I need to first attract, that intellectual. But yeah, like, even that's a journey, right? And it's a journey of learning and unlearning. Yeah.
Can I really add on? You can close it off. To the safety net of identifying as aromantic or asexual, I think for me, it's the safety of I know who I am, and outside my gender identity, I identify as pansexual, so I'm attracted to people, to simplify it. So it was so hard for me to navigate because with my sexual experiences, it's been mostly men. But navigating that as a non-binary trans body is like, how am I going to navigate a relationship with someone that is not a man and in a sphere where I'm not experienced in? So I'm just like, actually, I'm asexual. Let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at Let's leave it at that. That's much more safer for me. It's hard. Like, it's hard. This is literally the body for you that you get.
The question says, how do you feel about being sexualized for being queer, and do you think you are sexualized for being queer?
Yes. Like, there's so much hypersexualization when you're queer, whatever identity. Once you are visibly queer, you just hypersexualized and you're exposed to so much hyper.
And I'm sorry to cut you. I'm sorry to cut you from your page. Who is sexualizing? And if it's people in the community, is that a conversation we should be having about ourselves?
Outside the community, within the community. In a sense that my personal experiences, especially as a femfolk, people my age were not attracted to me as much as people that were older than me. And with them being older, they will literally sexualize me. At the same light, people that don't identify as queer use me as a sexual experiment. And I know I'm not the only one that experiences that. Even girls that identify as lesbian or bi, they'll have straight girls come to them and want to kiss them.
To add on to that, like, as someone who does identify as lesbian, it's almost a sort of violence, because then interacting with people who do not identify or do not understand, suddenly my body becomes a place of conquering. You want to conquer me, you want to conquer who I am. And then I become an object to you. I become an aspiration. But also just because you're inserting yourself into my narrative in that specific way. And it's hard.
And I think you should consider doing poetry. Can we all hear that?
Damn, thank you. I mean,
I've never seen you in Shakespeare in one room. I'm just gonna say. I'm not just saying.
it's not something like that.
I know! That's not a compliment, is it?
I think the hardest part is that with the hypersexualization is that they treat you as if them perceiving you sexually, specifically. Yes. Even with relationships, like
deeper.
As a trans folk, people that are in relationships with me will treat me as if they're doing me a favor by being with me. And I will say this because their past partners don't look like me, or are not as visible like me, and the way that I'm treated is not the same way they've treated their past partners or their other partners after me. They're more visible about their relationships. Even though it's a queer relationship, they're more visible about their relationship, they're more open about who they're with, as opposed to when it comes to me. And it all links to the hypersexualization of being queer.
But then, like, in that space as well, why do you think you're better than me?
Yes.
Why do you think you're better than me?
What constitutes that?
Why do you think you're doing me a favor? Why do you hold yourself so much above? And I think that goes a lot towards like the transphobia, femphobia that we have in the queer community.
The no facts, the no facts.
Yes.
So for our last question, something light, something, you know, just let us know about yourself.
It has been very heavy, I know.
Have any of you lied and told somebody that you love them knowing very well you don't? And I want you to think now. Consider that you've navigated relationships differently as a queer person.
Please ask the camera the question as well.
Have you ever told someone you love them, romantic, knowing that you don't?
Kiki, do you love me?
Yo.
No. I'm always open about how I feel. If I like you, I'll make it a thing. Like, if I'm interested in you, I'll make a move if it means I make the first move.
Well, could never clear.
I would actually rather.
I'm actually looking at Buhle.
I'm making a move with my mind.
No, then you drop it. I'll drop the PowerPoint. No, more than anything is because I never perceived. So I'm like, if I want someone, let me take the initiative. So if someone does perceive me and I'm not necessarily into them, I'm gonna tell them that no. Like, I'll find a way, a nice way to say it. I'm gonna be like, no.
Because you're not forcing to be desired.
Exactly.
I get that. And I also think that like the idea of love is so much a be all and end all, like I was saying earlier. It doesn't really hold space for like how feelings change. Because I've been in relationships where I genuinely did love her, like I did, and then I just didn't anymore. And it's no one's fault again, but it happens. And
it's true. It's
exactly.
real.
And then it comes into the question of like, are you brave enough to end this relationship because you don't reciprocate those feelings anymore?
You know what I'm brave enough to do? To end this video.
I knew it.
Thank you so much for being here for episode 2 of Queer Talks season 2 with none other than the baddest bitches on the pen. Oh, no, I'm joking. I want to leave you all with this. Cameron, what do you want to leave them with?
I don't know, man. Just be true to yourself, I
Yeah.
guess.
Likhona.
Be yourself. Fuck everything else.
You deserve love, but in the way that like you understand it.
Yes, that. With any of that.
Buhle.
Thank
you. And remember, if you love me, PayPal link is in the description down below. And if there's no zeros, it's not love. Inkomo ngiyayifuna. Bye.